The message came in on all frequencies, in all languages. Desperate and helpless. Please, they're coming. We can't stop them. The signal echoed across Earth's communications networks. Scientists, military leaders, and government officials gathered for an emergency meeting to discuss the unprecedented alien contact. The message came from a distant star system, nearly 50 light-years away. But the translation was perfect, and every human language. It must be a trick, General Clark insisted, slamming his fist on the conference table. An alien civilization shouldn't know. Neither languages, nor languages. Dr. Walker, the head of the sensitive linguistics department, shook her head. The message contains embedded translation matrices. It should be understandable to any civilization capable of receiving it. This is a genuine distress signal. In orbit above Earth, the battleship's terminal continued its regular patrol. Captain James Reed watched the blue planet below, unaware that his life was about to change forever. His ship was Earth's newest military vessel, designed for deep space operations, and armed with weapons developed over centuries of humanity. Internal conflict. The captain, his communications officer, was called. Priority message from command. He read it, adjusted the form, and moved it to the main screen. Admiral Wilson's stern face appeared. He read, "Have you heard about the alien signal?" The admiral responded for the last time, "Yes, sir, the entire planet. We have decided to respond." Ominous. "Will establish first contact." Reed's heart sank. First contact. Words humanity has waited centuries to hear. Why us? "Sir, where is the military ship, not the diplomatic vessel?" Admiral Wilson's expression darkened, because the message was a call for help against something that kills. "If we're heading into danger, I want our best ship there." 3 days later, the terminal was ready for departure. The governments of Earth were united in their decision to answer the call. This was humanity's chance to join any galactic community that existed beyond our solar system. He read it and addressed his crew of 400 from Rage. "We don't know what we're facing. We don't know who sent the message, but we know they need help, and Earth has decided to provide it. The mission is dangerous and will undoubtedly change human history forever." The terminal engaged its experimental superluminal drive, vanishing from Earth orbit in a flash of light that momentarily blotted out the sun. Weeks later, they reached the coordinates specified in the message. A vast space station orbited a blue-green world. The station's design was elegant, with its smooth curves and transparent sections revealing gardens within. It was nothing like the utilitarian human ships they'd summoned. The communications officer reported that the main screen had come to life, revealing a slender creature with 4 arms and a dozen skins. Its large eyes widened noticeably at the sight of humans. "You have arrived," the alien said. His voice translated through the same matrix that had decoded their distress signal. "We did not expect a response from yours. I am Captain James Reed, from the ship's Earth terminal. We have received your distress signal." The alien's body trembled slightly. "I am the ambassador. List of the Galactic Coalition. We sent our signal to all corners of the galaxy, but we had no idea." The alien paused. "Seen together. Courage. I never imagined the Deathworlders would respond. The Deathworlders have read. Your planet is classified as a death world. And our data is too dangerous to approach. Your gravity, atmosphere, pathogens, predators, and even your own. The aggression level of your own species. All of them are deadly by our standards." Reed exchanged glances with his officers. "Then why? I request our assistance." The ambassador is alive, his hands folded in a gesture resembling prayer. "Because what awaits us is worse than anything, even if you. We call it a void swarm. It consumes everything in its path. And our weapons can't stop it." The coalition station's docking bay was enormous, designed to accommodate ships from hundreds of different worlds. The terminal looked out of place among the sleek, multicolored ships, dark, angular, and bristling with weapons. Captain Reed leads a small team onto the station. Ambassador waiting for a group of aliens. Each stranger than the last, some hovering in midair, others standing on multiple legs. And one seemed to be made of living crystal. "Welcome to Harmony Station," Lift said, keeping a noticeable distance from the humans. "Please forgive our caution. Your biology concerns us." Reed nodded. "We understand. We come in peace and offer assistance." Crystal stepped forward, as if dancing through his transparent body. "I am an elder of the council. Your ship is a weapon, a battleship." "Reed," he answered honestly. "Built for defense." "Come." A wave of whispers passed through the alien delegation. One small. A creature the size of a sixth fainted, falling into the arms of its companions. Its voice trembled. Your entire ship is designed for war. We've heard rumors that death. The elders built such things, but to see this. You asked for help against something that's killing your people. Reed said, what did you expect? Perhaps it's the learned diplomats shimmering, a crystalline form. A pillar of light, and not warriors. I read it and looked around the beautiful station. Everything was created for comfort and beauty. Know that there is no defense. These people had no weapons. They knew no war. They understood, take us to your command center. Reed said, show us what we face. The central chamber of harmony contained a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Hundreds of gray. Yes, the dots represented a growing mass of coalition worlds, consuming one edge of their territory. The void swarm began at the edge of known space. The living one explained that it was not intelligent as we understand it. It simply absorbed what it read. He studied the map. How fast was it moving? It consumed 17 worlds in a single cycle. Glint replied, billions dead. Nothing left. And your defense? Lieutenant Adams asked. This is the tactical officer reading. The aliens exchanged awkward glances. We must pay attention to technology. Lived carefully. Designed to repel aggressive species. Nothing is meant for war. Reads, a hardened expression. Show me your leg. Each member of the swarm's holographic display changed to show a planet, surrounded by what looked like a living cloud. Billions of insects, each the size of a small car, covered the plants on the world's surface. Animals. Even buildings dissolve under their touch. The swarm absorbs all organic matter and transforms it into something greater than the swarm itself. The living explained that our weapons barely slowed it down. The humans watched silently. Finally, we've returned to the aliens who will help you. But you need to understand something about humans. We come from a world where everything is trying to kill us. The weather. The animals. Even the microscopic creatures you can't see. We survive by fighting. That's what we know. Raises his weapon. Made a complex gesture. What are you saying, Captain? I'm saying our methods may shock you. We won't just try to stop the swarm, we will destroy it. Several aliens retreated. One made a sound like boiling water. You speak of extermination. The glitter pulsed rapidly through its crystalline form. I speak of survival. Read, your questions and ours have been answered. Because if this heat continues to grow, eventually it will find Earth. The coalition representatives, huddled together, speak. Their voices too quiet for the translation matrix to pick up. Finally, the living have approached. Read again. We have no choice but to accept your offer. Captain, but please understand. Violence is alien. Do you consider our nature normal? It may be difficult for us to observe what is happening. Read. Nod. I will need all your data on the swarm's behavior. Its biological characteristics, its weaknesses. That's it, and then get off your ass. Then I call for the berth. We'll need more ships, as the remaining humans must return to their ships. Elder Glint turned to Liv. Have we made a terrible mistake? These creatures seem as dangerous as the swarm itself. Alive. Watch as the humans leave. Their heavy footsteps move down the corridor. Perhaps, but the swarm leaves us no choice. We must hope that these inhabitants of the death world can save us. And that they will leave when their task is complete. The laboratory aboard the terminal hummed with activity. Dr. Eliza Morgan bent over a microscope, examining the void swarm samples provided by the coalition. 3 days had passed since Captain Reed sent his report to Earth. And the response had been swift. Earth was sending reinforcements. 5 more battleships and a research vessel full of scientists. A fascinating bioweapon, Dr. Morgan muttered, adjusting the microscope. Their cellular structure is unlike anything I've seen before. Lieutenant Adams stood nearby, watching the scientist at work. Can you find a weakness? Dr. Morgan looked up, her eyes ablaze with the excitement of discovery. Oh yes, everything is a weakness. These creatures are linked by a biological network, a kind of hive mind. But their rapid growth comes at a price. On the bridge, Captain Reed met with the Ambassador Liv and Elder Glint. Ha! All the graphic displays showed the swarms advancing toward the Coalition core world. Your people need to evacuate these 3 systems immediately, Reed said, pointing to the planets in the swarm's path. Litz's body trembled. That's 11 billion people. We don't have enough ships. Then we'll buy you time, Reed the reply. He touched the control button, and the display changed, showing a battle plan that would establish a defensive line here. In Cygnus Gorge, there's a natural choke point. Elder Glints. The crystalline form dimmed slightly. You intend to engage the swarm directly. Our weapons cannot harm them. The watch can read. Simply said Dr. Morgan. She believes she's found a biological weakness we can exploit. As if on cue, Dr. Morgan entered the bridge with a small container. Captain, I've developed a targeted pathogen. It attacks the swarm's unique biology without affecting other lifeforms. She placed the container on the table. This is just a sample. It will need to be produced in massive quantities. The ambassador, live on air, stepped away from the container. You created the disease. It's a deliberate biological weapon, Morgan explained. Designed specifically to combat the swarm. Elder Glintz's voice rose. It's forbidden. Life should not be used as a weapon. He read the expression. Hardened. The swarm is killing your people by the billions. Would you prefer to maintain your moral standing or survive a tense situation? Silence filled the bridge. Finally, the elevator spoke. A voice barely above a whisper. How will this weapon be used? Dr. Morgan brought up a simulation on the display. We loaded it into missile warheads. On impact, the pathogen spreads in an aerosol cloud, infecting swarm organisms, disrupting their cellular functions and preventing them from reproducing. Infected units will die within hours. She continued, more importantly, they will spread the pathogen to others in the hive network. You're talking about killing trillions of living beings, Glint said. Creatures that are devouring your world, Adams countered. The communications officer interrupted the discussion. Captain, the Earth fleet has arrived. General Harris requests to speak with you. Within a few hours. Human reinforcements assembled in the kill zone. 6 battleships formed a defensive line, and behind them, a research vessel began mass production of Dr. Martin's pathogen. Coalition representatives watched in horror and fascination as the humans prepared for war with the efficiency long described by pro-actors. Weapons were tested, fighters were fueled, and missiles were loaded with the biological agent. The first wave of the swarm will reach us in 12 hours. General Harris announced at the final briefing. Our strategy is simple. Hold the line and launch the pathogen. If Morgan is right, we will see results within days. The ambassador addressed. The human commanders live on air with formal seriousness. The coalition has existed for 3,000 years without weapons. Today we are witnessing methods that challenge our most sworn enemy. Yes. But we have no choice. We thank you for your assistance. Though your methods frighten us. Red, he nodded respectfully. Sometimes survival requires doing frightening things. The ambassador. 3 days later. The first encounter with the swarm would be with the human warships that fired missiles into the approaching cloud. A logical cloud. The pathogen dissipated exactly as Dr. Morgan predicted, for the first time in its existence, the void swarm retreated. The planet Helio rotated slowly under a red sun. Once home to over 5 million coalition citizens. It now served as the front line. And humanity fought against the void. Swarm coalition ships filled the sky, ferrying civilians to safety, while the human fleet established a defensive perimeter around the evacuation zones. Lieutenant Marcus River A stood at the edge of the landing zone, overseeing the loading of the last transports. His combat armor was scratched and dented from 3 weeks of fighting. Next to him, 50 human soldiers prepared weapons and equipment. How many more must be evacuated? Rivera asked the coalition coordinator. A tall insect, resembling a trill, 6,000 trolls replied. Their mandibles clicked nervously. But our sensors detected swarm activity approaching from the north. They adapted to the pathogen faster than expected. River, he said, nodding grimly. Dr. Morgan's bioweapon worked brilliantly at first. But the swarm evolved, each new generation offering increasing resistance. Which will hold them back? River A said. Just get your men on those ships. The trill in its compound eyes reflected the setting sun. You can't stop them with such a small force. River, I checked his rifle. You weren't the type. You're used to fighting against odds. The radio crackled. Lieutenant. Swarm of squads spotted 5 miles from target and closing fast. River ordered his team to remember. Target the nodal clusters. They're still vulnerable. The human soldiers spread out along the ridgeline, watching the evacuation site. The planet's harsh conditions, thin air, high gravity, and scorching heat, had already claimed the lives of River's crew. But the remaining soldiers had adapted, using the harsh conditions to their advantage. They're coming, Surgeon Cooper shouted from her observation post. Thousands of them. River raised her binoculars. The horizon darkened as the swarm approached. A writhing mass of buds, bodies flowing like liquid across the rocky terrain. Hold on until they reach the marked line, River ordered. Then hit them with everything we've got. The first wave of the swarm crossed the invisible boundary. River gave the signal, and the ridge erupted in gunfire. We've crashed into the alien mass. Each explosion destroyed dozens of creatures. But for every one that fell, 10 more burst from their minds. They're adapting to our attack pattern. Cooper shouted over the gunfire. River watched as the swarm split into 3 groups. One continued the frontal assault, while the other moved to flank the human position. They've never done this before. He muttered, they're learning. What should we do? The young soldier asked. Fear was evident in his voice. River studied the terrain. The planet's harsh surface worked to their advantage. A series of deep ravines cut through the landscape to the left and right of them. Cooper. Lead your team to Jackson's eastern ravine, the western ravine. Set explosive charges that will funnel them through the center. The soldiers move quickly, using the planet's high gravity to descend into the ravines. Rivera's remaining forces increased their fire on the central group, drawing the swarm's attention. The plan worked. The swarm concentrated its advance through the center, avoiding the ravines. As the flanking groups took position, Rivera gave the signal. A double explosion rocked the battlefield. Tons of rubble rained down, crushing hundreds of swarm troops and blocking their advance through the ravines. The remaining forces concentrated all their firepower on the central group for 3 hours, holding the line. The evacuation ships filled up and descended, one by one as the troops suffered heavy losses. 20 dead, 15 wounded. The last transport gone. The warble on the radio was transmitted to all civilians. I looked at his remaining forces, bloodied, exhausted, but still fighting. Retreat to the extraction point. Mission accomplished. As the human dropships descended to pick up Rivers, survivors took one last look at the battlefield. The swarm halted their advance, gathering their forces for a new attack. They're retreating, Cooper said incredulously. River. I shook my head. Not retreating. Adapting. They'll be stronger next time. Aboard the coalition command ship, The ambassador will raise them. Watch the humans, the soldiers are returning. How many have you lost? Rivera asked. 40% of my forces. River replied lifelessly. But we held the line, lives for weapons. A gesture of deep respect, We've never seen anyone so stranded. Reassess your men, They fight in a way we can't understand. River removed his damaged helmet. That's why you called us ambassadors. Because sometimes survival means the impossible. Dr. Morgan hadn't slept for 3 days, Her laboratory aboard the research vessel. Pastor had become both her prison and her salvation under the harsh light. She studied the latest swarm samples, watching with growing alarm. As each test showed increased resistance to her original pathogen, They adapt faster than any organism I've ever seen. She explained to Captain Reed during their emergency meeting the original strain is now only 30% effective. Reed's face reflected the strain of weeks of constant battle. We cannot continue this defensive war. Every retreat costs us dearly, General Harris of the coalition world nodded in agreement. His holographic image flickered slightly. Transmitted from the flagship. Intelligence has located what appears to be the swarm's primary breeding ground, a planet they've completely overrun in the Vegas sector. Morgan looked up from her data. If I could get fresh samples from the source, I could develop a more effective weapon. Something they haven't adapted to yet. Reed studied the star map. It's deep in swarm territory. We'll need a full battle group to reach it, Then we'll use it. Harris has decided. Captain Reed, you'll leave the assault team, The coalition will provide transport and logistical support. Your mission is to deliver Dr. Morgan to the breeding planet and back with the samples. The ambassador, who had been listening quietly, finally said, my people will help. But we can't fight. We don't have warriors. We're not asking you to fight. Reed replied, just get us there. We'll deal with the rest in 3 days. The largest fleet ever assembled in the history of the coalition is moving toward swarm territory. 6 human battleships form the core, surrounded by hundreds of coalition transport and support ships. The plan was simple but dangerous: break through the swarm's outer defenses, reach the breeding planet, and deploy Dr. Morgan's team to collect samples before retreating. Reed stood on the terminal bridge, watching the first swarm defenders emerge. All ship sensors, combat positions. He ordered the coalition ships to withdraw to a safe distance. Here, we earn our sanctuary. The human ships formed formation. Their weapons systems activated with practiced precision. The swarm responded, sending thousands of smaller units to encircle the fleet. They had never coordinated like this before. Lieutenant Adams is monitoring their tactical development. Then we'll respond. Execute pattern Delta, target their largest concentrations. The human ships broke formation, each taking its own attack vector, their weapons ripping through the swarm, creating temporary breaches in the living wall of creatures, and attacked. The weapons officer reported the target, their center of mass, and fire red, ordering the terminal to close as his primary weapon. Unleashed a bright beam of energy that cut through the swarm's formation, vaporizing thousands. The creatures vanished instantly, the remaining human ships following suit. The combined firepower blazed a trail forward for 6 hours. The battle raged in space, and human ships were lost. Their crews evacuated to coalition ships as the swarm overwhelmed their defenses. But the strategy had worked. They had broken through to the breeding world. We are in position. Reed, report to Dr. Morgan's team. You have 1 hour on the surface. The science vessel descended into the atmosphere under the protection of fighter escorts. Beneath the planet's surface, swarm activity was seething. What had once been mountains and oceans was now a single massive organism, a swarm hive. Dr. Morgan was rapidly collecting samples from various regions. These are the primary Genesis nodes. She explained to her team the source of all the swarm units. If we can target them specifically, the ground beneath them suddenly exploded. A swarm unlike any they'd seen before emerged from the surface. Larger, more armored units emerged from the surface. "We have company," one of the security personnel shouted. "New type of swarm, deliver samples to the ship," Morgan ordered. The guards formed a defensive line, a circle around her team. The retreat became chaotic. The scientists fell under the swarm's onslaught. Despite the guards' best efforts, Morgan barely reached the board with the precious samples when the creature swarmed toward the landing zone. Back in orbit, Reed made the most difficult decision of his career: launch the Nova bombs, targeting the main structures of the building. The nuclear devices fell to the planet's surface, detonating sequentially in the main clusters of the swarm. The explosions were visible from space. Bright flashes for a moment. They blacked out the system. "Son, did it work?" Harris asks from his can. "Reed, check the sensor readings. We've seriously wounded them, but they're already recovering." Dr. Morgan grabbed her sample container. "Enough. I can work with this." The fleet was retreating. Reed looked back at the wounded planet for the first time. Humanity dealt a significant blow to the swarm. But the cost was high: hundreds of human lives and irreplaceable ships. "We won't get another chance like this." He told Harris privately that whatever Morgan was developing had to work. "We're running out of time and resources." The Situation Room on board the Coalition flagship Silent Dawn had never been so crowded. Representatives of 17 species gathered around the central display, watching the red mass, representing the swarm advance relentlessly toward their core world. "Dr. Morgan's advanced pathogen gave us 3 weeks. Captain Reed explained in his own voice. Hello." With exhaustion. "But the swarm has adapted again. Their new generation is demonstrating complete immunity. The ambassador lifts his usually iridescent skin, which has faded to gray, and we have lost. The coalition has existed for 3,000 years. And now we face extinction." Silence fell over the room. 6 weeks of brutal fighting had cost humanity nearly a third of its deployed forces. The coalition. "We lost 11 worlds to the swarm, billions dead or displaced. Every victory temporary, every defeat permanent." "Not yet," Dr. Morgan said, stepping forward. Her lab coat was stained and wrinkled from days without rest. "I've studied the swarm's energy patterns. They're attracted to thermal radiation. That's how they find habitable worlds. I've read, I've watched, we already knew." "Yes, but I was thinking on a different scale." Morgan activated a display, showing a massive gas giant at the edge of Coalition space. "That's Hyperion, a gas giant composed primarily of hydrogen and helium. Ideal materials for fusion. The elder glitters. Crystalline form." Interrogation. The East is confused. "What are you proposing?" Morgan took a deep breath. "We'll convert Hyperion into an impromptu nova. A controlled fusion reaction that will release a massive thermal pulse." The coalition representatives muttered in shock. "You want to destroy an entire planet?" Morgan said, her voice shaking. "The thermal pulse will act as bait, attracting the entire swarm. When enough of them have gathered, we will detonate the planet's core." He read it. Finished understanding, and understanding dawned on his face. "Absorb a stellar-level event that will destroy them. The energy release will be equivalent to a small supernova." Morgan confirmed that no one would survive for 6 months. The Coalition Council erupted in protest. Elder Glintz's voice drowned out all the others. "It's unthinkable. Periods. The moons have research bases. 3 nearby systems will be devastated by radiation. We cannot commit such an act of destruction." He read it. He stepped forward. His patience, exhausted by weeks of battle. "The swarm will reach your homeworlds. And in 15 days. How many more billions will die while you cling to principles that the enemy doesn't share? General Harris joined the hologram. He nodded in agreement. All the usual options have failed. The swarm adapts to everything we throw at it. Perhaps this is our only chance to end this. The ambassador stepped live to the center of the room, silencing the argument with a gesture. I've seen people fight and die for people they never knew existed. Their methods disturb us, but their sacrifice is real. He turned to Elder Glint. We must review Dr. Morgan's plan within 6 hours. Scientists from the Fury of Debate Coalition were analyzing Morgan's proposal, searching for alternatives. No results found. Dr. Morgan monitored from a terminal, checking the calculations that would determine whether their desperate gamble had been successful or not. The difficulty will be in calculating the timing. She explained what needed to be read so someone could manually activate the catalyst after confirming the swarm's gathering. Radiation would make remote detonation impossible. Read and study the mission parameters. It's a suicide mission. Whoever activated the catalyst will have a maximum of a few minutes to avoid the initial blast wave. I'll lead the launch team, he said simply. Morgan looked at the captain, terrified. The chances of survival are irrelevant. Read what you finished. It's our only chance. I won't ask anyone else. Preparations continued. Roy seemed to sense a trap. His progress toward the coalition homeworld slowed as units began moving toward Hyperion. It's working, Morgan whispered, watching the sensor readings. They're responding to the heat decoy. I've assembled my team of volunteers, 15 men and women. Realizing they might not return, boarded a small, fast ship. This will lead them to the Hyperion. Ambassador, your willingness to sacrifice yourself. The alien struggled to find the words. We have no concept of that in our language. Read it, he smiled slightly. We call it an ambassador of courage. This is what death worlds to a small stealth ship. The barrage of fire approached the swirling surface of Hyperion. The captain read through the viewports, and his 14 volunteers watched as a vast gas giant loomed before them. Its atmosphere swirled with violent storms, more powerful than Earth itself. But wasn't it the planet that attracted their attention? The space around Hyperion was teeming with enemies. Billions of swarm units had gathered, drawn by the thermal decoy Dr. Morgan had devised. The plan was working perfectly. Lieutenant Adams announced from the pilot's seat that they were on their final approach. Her hands moved smoothly. Italy, despite knowing this could be her final mission, will reach the landing point in 5 minutes. Reed addressed his team. Once we're in position, we'll have 30 minutes to install the catalytic devices and retreat to a safe distance. He paused, meeting everyone's gaze. If we succeed, the galaxy will survive. If we fail, the swarm will continue until nothing remains. No one was supposed to mention the slim chances of survival. They all agreed voluntarily, knowing the risks. The firebreak dived into Hyperion's upper atmosphere, using the planetary storms as cover. The swarm flew past, unaware of the tiny human ship among them. Precisely at the calculated location, the crew activated the primary catalyst, a device designed to initiate a chain reaction in the planet's hydrogen core. The primary catalyst was activated. Reported to the engineer, initializing the heat. UPS sequence, read, check timer, 25 minutes to clear space. Let's move, they turned to leave. Disaster has occurred. The storm front crashed into the firewall, damaging the main engine. The ship tilted, and alarms blared throughout the cabin. The engine had failed. Adams shouted, "We're losing altitude." It read, "Transferring to engineering station. Can we reach escape velocity with the remaining engine?" The engineer's face told him everything. "We're not all on board, sir." Silence fell on the bridge. "The mission parameters have just changed from dangerous to lethal," he said. "And made the decision to immediately reduce the crew to a minimum of 5 and evacuate the rest to the emergency bay before anyone could object." He continued. "That's an order." The Pope increased the thrust to move to a safe distance. After a short, tense argument, the 9 crew members entered the escape pods. I read it and stayed with Engineer Adams and the others. Their task was now simple: keep the ship operational long enough to ensure proper catalyst activation. 10 minutes to launch. The engineer reported that the last escape pod had lifted off above them. Roy spotted a small ship leaving Hyperion's atmosphere. Thousands of units have been dispatched to reconnaissance. They are tracking the pods, Adams said, watching the sensor display. A communication channel is open. Coalition. Command. Our location has been compromised. Begin operation, Son of Forge. Immediately. From a safe distance, the Coalition and human fleets watched as the swarm swarmed around Hyperion, drawn by the catalyst's growing heat signature. 5 minutes to launch, Dr. Morgan announced, her gaze glued to the ship's data feed. Catalyst stable. Ambassador. Live in. Elder Glint stood silently nearby, watching as the humans prepared to sacrifice themselves for the alien galaxy on the firebreak. His team working feverishly to keep the damaged chip aloft. 2 minutes later, the engineer called, opening the final communication channel. "It's holding. Didn't James read to all ships? Catalyst active and stable. Prepare for detonation." He paused, then added, "It has been an honor to serve alongside all of you. Humans and Coalition alike. Whatever happens next, remember that we fought extinction together. And won. 1 minute to detonation. The impossible happened. The firebreak emergency systems channeled enough power into the damaged engine for a final push. We pressed the button and shouted, 'Attempt an emergency launch.' The small ship shot upward, fighting Hyperion's gravity with everything it had left behind. The catalyst reached critical temperature. The hydrogen vessel of the gas giants flared momentarily. The second sun burst into flames across the Coalition skies. The energy wave spread at nearly the speed of light, vaporizing everything in its path. 90% of the swarm perished in that moment. 3 days later, against all odds, the heavily damaged escape pod was discovered by a Coalition patrol ship. Inside were Captain Reed and Lieutenant Adams, barely alive, the only survivors of the firebreak crew. A month later, in the Great Hall of the Coalition Council, the people stood as honored guests, the ambassador addressing the assembled representatives. For 3,000 years, we believe that violence has no place in a civilized society. The Roy taught us that sometimes survival requires strength we didn't have. He turned to Captain Reed. Now recovered from his wounds, humans have shown us that courage means facing death. Not only for oneself, but for others. Even those who are different from oneself. Elder Glint stepped forward, ablaze with crystalline light. Today, we formally invite humanity to join the Galactic Coalition. Not as members, but as protectors. The role unique to each species has been read. Standing alongside Dr. Morgan and the other representatives of humanity, they bowed slightly to Earth, except for this honor. We hope to learn from your wisdom, as you have learned from our strength in Coalition space. Memorials were built in honor of the thousands who died fighting the swarm on Earth. The news that humans were no longer alone in the universe and had already saved it from destruction forever changed society. The remaining swarm units were hunted down in the following years. The Coalition worlds began to build their own defense forces under the guidance of human advisors. And somewhere in the vast darkness between the stars, Coalition scientists placed a special beacon, warning all who might hear of the deadly swarm and that